Okay. Good morning. We have it's a special day today called Guts Namen. Right? So wake up early. Shkimin lebis Knesses. Wake up early to go to Shul. To start the year on a good. There was a Rebbe that would go right after Yom Kippur and just pick his esrog. He wouldn't even look at it. He said that once your sins are forgiven, your choices are perfect. Just take an esrog just in the box. It would always be beautiful. Okay. We're going to start today on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph by the Mishnah. We learned yesterday, so we covered a little ground. The Mishnah says, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. It's most of our learning. We should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. We're learning for a Refuah Shleima, for all those that need, Father and Naftali and Bela. Okay, so it says like this: HaPesach va'achata sheshachtan shlei lishman. Korban Pesach or a Korban Chatas, which is what we learned in the Mishnah, that these two korbanos, around 13a, that these two korbanos, if they're slaughtered for the wrong sacrifice, they have like a different sacrifice in mind, so then it's going to be invalid. What about also Kibel, if he receives the blood, Bahalach, or he walks the blood up to the altar, Bezarak, or he sprinkles the blood, Shlei Lishman, for the wrong intention, would be the same halacha. Or let's say in the same service, he had two thoughts. He had a thought of the right korban and also a thought of the wrong korban. Or he has the intention of the wrong one and the right one. So in other words, it's either the wrong one first or it's the right one first. But whatever it is, he has the wrong one in there. You see where we are, Jeff? We went to 13. We did 2 pages yesterday. We didn't have to stop for breakfast, so we... Okay, I may get a call from the boys going to the airport. You're in the same boat? Yeah. So all of those are psulim. Why? Because these are the two sacrifices that become invalid if there's an intention of another sacrifice in there, the Pesach and the Chatas. Ketzad lishman v'shalei lishman, what would be an example of the right intention and the wrong intention? L'shem Pesach, l'shem shlamim. He has intention first for Korban Pesach, which that's what it was. And then he has intention later that it's for the shlamim in the same service. I don't know why Rashi has to say that it's in the same service. Let's say it was a different service. Let's say, the Shechita, and there's Kabbalah, and then there's Halacha. Why does it have to be in the same one? Rashi says, Shechishav ba'avoda achas.
Maybe it was Slishma.
It gets invalid because of the Shalei Lishma either way. Josh, you have any idea why Rashi's saying that?
Yeah, because it's like a kal v'chomer. If it's no good for one service, then for 2 services, you know what I mean? If it's no good for 2, for sure for 1.
Even though in this service itself he also had a good thought, nevertheless it becomes invalid by that other thought. Here what you say. Okay. Do you have a note here? Maybe. The Gemara asks this to mean that if the Kohen receives the blood Shlei Lishma or with legal intention, is this what we're talking about? No, this is not it. It refers to him. Yeah. That's going to be in a whole other discussion. Here, what's he saying? Okay, well, we said psulim, right? And these are 2 cases. The Shlei Lishman is the shem shlam or shlem pesach. Now the Mishnah explains shehazebach nifsal barba dvarim. The sacrifice becomes invalid. The Gemara later on is gonna talk about the difference. Hillel was just pointing this out. But here it says nifsal as opposed to nispagel. But we'll see later. The Gemara will discuss that. Shehazebach nifsal barba dvarim. There's 4 things that will invalidate a sacrifice. There's 4 services that thoughts by it will invalidate the sacrifice. B'shchita, b'kibel, b'hilach, b'zrika. Shchita, Kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. Those are the 4 things that are fun. Shifting over there now. Don't let it trip on the iPad, the Shas pad. Reb Shimon machshir b'hilach. Reb Shimon says that hilach doesn't count. The walking it up. Because he would say it's impossible to bring a sacrifice without slaughtering it, without receiving the blood, without sprinkling the blood. But you can do a sacrifice without walking the blood up to the altar. For example, you slaughter it close to the altar and you sprinkle it right where you're standing. You don't have to walk it up. Get a front seat. Rabbi Eliezer Reimer, my Gemara says Rabbi Lazar, on the side it says Rabbi Lazar. He says Rabbi Lazar is not common in the Mishnah. It would be Rabbi Lazar ben Shmuel. It would be another student of Rabbi Akiva. But it does make sense that together with Rabbi Shimon would be Rabbi Lazar, because Rabbi Lazar would be his friend. Rabbi Eliezer would be several generations earlier. So it wouldn't make sense to be Rabbi Eliezer, to have Rabbi Eliezer coming in after Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Eliezer is the teacher of Rabbi Akiva. It's Rabbi Akiva's teacher. Anyway,
Horkinus?
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to be Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus, but it would make sense to be Rabbi Lazar. And on the side of my Gemara corrects it to Rabbi Lazar. It's just not as common. If someone goes to a place where he's walking somewhere where it's necessary, so then thoughts during that walk are invalidate the sacrifice. But if he's going somewhere where he doesn't need to go, and the thoughts don't invalidate. That's if he is wearing his Fitbit and he's trying to get extra steps in, and it's not going to invalidate the sacrifice. You can't wear a Fitbit by the anyway.
There's another student of Rabbi Akiva named Rabbi Eliezer.
No, it's Rabbi Lazar.
No, that's Rabbi Eliezer ben Shmuel we always refer to. But there's another one called Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov.
Okay.
And that's on the same level.
Uh-huh.
So why can't he be instead of
Rabbi Eliezer ben
knocking
Yaakov.
around?
Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is always Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The Mishnah always.
It'll say that name. Okay.
Yeah. And there's actually two Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. I don't know if
They have a
one and two.
base.
Yeah. Actually, two. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Kabbalah mi pasla. There's a question here. Does receiving the blood, does it actually invalidate the sacrifice, the karban? But we have a brisa. The brisa says v'krivu. What's the full pasuk? V'krivu b'nei Aaron hakayanim, right? And the Aaron, the kayanim will bring. What does it mean to bring? Well, to bring it, you have to first get it. So v'krivu zu kabbalas adam. That's receiving the blood. Maybe it's referring to the sprinkling of the blood. It's bringing it close and very close till it goes on the altar. So v'zarku, but later on it says v'zarku, that they'll sprinkle the blood. Zrika Amar, so the Zrika's already said. Hamani Makayim v'krivus. What does it mean? They will bring Zuka Bal Saddam. It's receiving the blood. Bnei Aaron Akayanim. Bnei Aaron the Kayanim. Shetei b'kayin kasher b'kli sharis. Should be with a kosher Kohen. No, kosher Kohen means that he can't be a halal. Means his mother can't be a divorcee, or he can't be a balmon. And the kli sharis, Rashi says that he has to use a kli sharis is usually referring to a vessel that was a consecrated vessel. But Rashi says we're talking about the big day kahuna. That's what it means, kli sharis. Yeah, he has to be dressed appropriately in his uniform. Rabbi Akiva says, how do you know that Kabbalah can only be with a Kayin Kasher wearing his uniform? These are the sons of Aaron. It says over here, the sons of Aaron, and it says somewhere else, these are the names of the sons of Aaron that were anointed, and it goes on to say Elazar and Isamar, and Malahalan became Kasher b'Kli, just like over there, it's talking about the Kayanim that are kosher and they're wearing their uniform. Afkan b'Kayin Kasher b'Kli Sharis. Also, Kayin Kasher and Kli Sharis. Reb Tarfon says, "Akapeach banai. I'll bury my sons. Shamati, if I didn't hear. Lahavchen hefresh ben Kabbalah zrika." This is like a way of saying an oath. I swears that there's a difference between Kabbalah and Zrika. Mainly Lafarish, but I don't know what the difference is. I know there's a difference. Yeah, I know, but he says it several times.
I mean, he's so convinced ultimately of his opinion. I get it.
Yeah, I thought that was Asr to
Yeah.
say these kinds of things.
There is a Chavas Yair that discusses all of the forbidden comments that are in the Gemara. It's supposed to have an explanation about how it, something you find things that like, what, you're not supposed to say that, lashon hara things, or the way they derogatory terms they call each other, bald one, buck teeth, they call the. Marsha explain. Oh, there's a Marsha that Hill is telling me that's in the notes. So,
They just talked about Aaron's two sons, so it triggered.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah, Josh's comment. Interesting, very interesting comment. Ainli Lafarish, but in Reb Tarfon says, I don't know. Usually it's not Reb Tarfon that says Ainli Lafarish. Usually it's Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua says Shamati Veni de Lafarish. We explain that why does Rabbi Yeshua not know? Why didn't he ask when he heard about this comment? He says Shamati. Why didn't he ask what the pshat is? He says, I heard that there's a difference, but I don't know. Why didn't he ask? So when Rabbi Yeshua says it, we said the reason why he didn't ask because we know that his mother brought him to the Beis Medrash in the stroller, in the carriage. So he would hear, but he doesn't know it's a baby. Wasn't able to ask. He cried, like, tell me the pshat, and they thought he wanted a bottle. So, but Rabbi Tarfon, I don't know. Okay, Vein Lafarsh. Amar Rabbi
He
Ki.
didn't have a son.
Oh, there's a Gemara about Metzia, maybe.
Yeah.
There's a Gemara about Metzia that
And it goes into detail there. Just saying.
They try to bring his grandson back to Tshuva. It was the Gemara about Metzia. Yeah, they have the whole story there. What is that? 86 or something?
85 a.m.
Sorry.
Man.
I'm Rabbi Akiva. And Akiva says, Ani Afarish. I'll tell you what you heard. Kabbalah la yaseh b'machshava k'maisa. By Kabbalah, by receiving the blood, machshava is not k'maisa. Thought isn't like action by receiving the blood. Zrika, when it comes to sprinkling the blood, aseh b'machshava k'maisa. The thought is like action. Now this is what we were looking for here. Kabbalah mipasla, right? We said at the beginning, by receiving the blood, will that invalidate? He was saying by receiving the blood, the thoughts by receiving the blood doesn't invalidate. It's only by the zrika. Kiblu b'chutz, if he receives the blood, another point. If he receives the blood outside the temple, in chav kares, there's no kares. If someone offers a sacrifice outside the temple, that's quite a serious sin. That's kares. I'm sorry. You mean by Eliyahu Kibla b'chutz ein chayav kares. There's no kares. A zarku b'chutz, but if he sprinkles the blood on his kares. So in other words, it's by the zrika there would be, by the Kabbalah there won't be. So in other words, receiving the blood outside the temple is not as severe as zrika. In other words, we're looking here for differences between Kabbalah and zrika. Kablu psulim. Someone told me that if they found out that they weren't really Jewish, a grandmother conversion, something, it wasn't invalid, what would you do? They're going to convert you tomorrow, but meanwhile, today, what would you do? So he said, I would build a bama and I would offer a carbon. He says, because a non-Jew can build what should I do for Hashem while I'm not Jewish? Build a. Okay, so Zarka on the
If he had a cheeseburger, would he have to make
Kablu psulim, or let's say people that are not kosher receive the blood. In chayavan alav, you won't be chayiv. What would they be chayiv anyway? Chayiv misa. If a zar or someone that was drunk received the blood, that's quite a serious sin. Be drunk in the temple, or to be a non-Kohen doing the service. So in chayav you won't be chayav misa b'dei shemayim. Why? Because you're only chayav for things that are the final service, not for the intermediary ones. So we're talking about the difference between Kabbalah and Zrika. Chayav kar zarka b'chutz anis ein chayav zarka psulim chayav and alav. But if psulim received the blood, if psulim sprinkled the blood, they would yes be chayav. Amar Reb Tarfon, after Rabbi Akiva tells him all his things, he says, Amar Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon says to him, Ha'avoda. That's also like, I swear. At hitisa im at hitisi yamin small. If you would deviate to the right or to the left, that means everything you said was perfect. Ani shamati, I heard this from a tradition. Vainly lafarsan. I don't even know what the tradition was. And you just expounded from your own logic, and you were able to come up with what was taught in tradition. In this expression he used, he says, Akiva. Anyone that separates himself from you is like separating from life.
Wow.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Now,
To back up a second, you had the sentence where it said the people who would do the Zrika, they would have the death penalty, chayav and alav, but not the ones that do the Kabbalah.
yeah,
Unqualified. So it says in the article, the unqualified is the Kohen that got drunk. So if the Kohen was
Right.
okay, so then if in the middle he got drunk, or another Kohen got drunk, please.
Yeah.
But I thought the first time the guy wasn't allowed to be drunk. Kabbalah. I thought the Kohen.
no, so he wouldn't have Misa for Kabbalah. He wouldn't have the punishment if he's drunk and he does the Kabbalah.
So Tarfon is agreeing with Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah.
Against the Mishnah.
Yeah, against,
Kabbalah is no lishma is possible.
yeah. It's against the Mishnah, against what we, at the beginning of the Brisa, but we're asking Kabbalah mi pasla, we have Reb Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva that say that it's not. So the Gemara answers, Amarava, yeah, it's good. The trunk part. Amarava like kasha, kan b'machshavas pigel, kan b'machshavas shalei lishma. There's two types of machshava. The Mishnah is talking about shalei lishma, the wrong carbon. Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva are talking about pigel. Pigel is when someone has thoughts that he's going to do a service out of the allotted time. Tomorrow I'm going to sprinkle the blood, something like that. I'm going to eat the meat after the time. I'm going to put the meat on the altar at the wrong time. Sprinkle the blood at the wrong time. Amar Rava leikash Dekanami, I'll prove it to you. Diktani, it's taught in the Mishnah, Shehazebach nifsal, the laiktani mispagel. It says that the sacrifice is invalid. It doesn't say that it's pickled. Okay. Shmamina, we see that that's the pshat in the Mishnah, that we're talking about shalei lishma, we're not talking about pigel. Okay. Achsheves pigel like pasla b'Kabbalah, the Gemara asks. And if someone has thoughts of pigel thoughts, that's thoughts that he's going to do a service after out of the allotted time, that won't invalidate by Kabbalah v'Tanya, but we have a brisa that says, I could have thought that maybe thoughts only affect by the sprinkling. How do we know that also Shchita and Kabbalah, thoughts by the Shchita and Kabbalah will also invalidate Talmud Laimar? The pasuk says, if someone will eat from the sacrifice of the peace sacrifice, Pigalhu, and the third day, Pigalhu lo yiratze, it won't be an appeasement. Now the Gemara learns that it doesn't actually mean to eat it, but he has thoughts of eating it, right? We're talking only about services that would bring to the eating. So which means what brings to the eating is the zrika. And besides for the zrika would also be the shchita and the Kabbalah. Because in other words, any service that's absolutely necessary for the validity of the sacrifice would also be included in that. So which means Shchita and Kabbalah would be included because of this. Maybe the spilling of the extra blood, the remainder of the blood on the foundation of the altar, and also the burning of the limbs. Maybe that should also affect the validity, and also that should cause pigul. It says on the third day, it won't be an appeasement. Now, when it says it won't be an appeasement, that's referring to the zrika. The one that offers it will not be counted. Zrika b'chlal haisa. So if you already mentioned zrika before, and now because it was that was a service that was necessary for the eating, and now you add in is it the lo yiratza which includes zrika? Yeah. So lama yatzas. So why do you have to designate? Why do you have to specify zrika if zrika was included in the general rule? So the Gemara says lahaka sheila to do a comparison. Just like zrika, which is unique, which is an avodah mechaperes, that causes an atonement. Umakeves kapara. I think you might have to take out that word. And it also, you take out the word. It's a cause atonement. What's makeves again?
Holds back.
It holds back.
Delays also.
It holds back the atonement. Afkal avodah makeves kapara. Also, any service.
Like this, you said disqualified the other time. Like
Disqualified.
No, here they say essential, same idea.
That's essential.
From a different.
Makeves kapara. It's essential for the atonement. Afkal avodah makeves kapara. Also, any service that is essential for the atonement. This comes to exclude the pouring of the blood, the pouring of the remainder of the blood, and offering the limbs, which don't affect the atonement. So therefore, thoughts by the pouring of the blood, not the sprinkling of the blood, the pouring of the blood. The sprinkling of the blood is the main service. The pouring of the remainder of the blood and offering of the limbs on the fire, the pyre, is not the main service, because even if that's not done, the sacrifice is still valid.
This is the origin of this little people. See the gives.
Extreme thought.
Okay.
Closer where you. Sorry.
You should write the whole Mother Goose rhymes. Rewrite the whole thing.
Or the Gemara.
Okay.
Cornish big pigs. See?
So what's the question?
Dr. Stein's talking about this little piglet went to the market.
Right. So what's the question over here?
Okay, the question is, to keep me focused. The question is that we said that pigel doesn't affect Kabbalah. Thoughts of pigel by Kabbalah don't. So the Gemara challenges that, because we said what we said originally was that thoughts by Kabbalah in the Mishnah we learned, if someone has the wrong thought by Kabbalah, the sacrifice becomes invalid. Then we said, really, by Kabbalah, sacrifice becomes invalid? Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva, sacrifice doesn't become invalid by Kabbalah. So he said, oh no, that doesn't become invalid. It's by pigel it doesn't become invalid. But by Shalei Lishma it would become invalid. So we quote another brisa that says that by pigel, by Kabbalah, it does become invalid. So what are you telling me? By pigel, it doesn't become invalid. We have this whole thing that the Kabbalah would be essential. It's just like Shechita. Okay, so the Gemara says, Ella, so rather, we're going to have to explain like kasha. It's not a problem. It's not a question. Ha di amar hareini sheichet al menas lekabel dam lemacher. If he says, I'm slaughtering the animal to receive the blood tomorrow, so then
Because he's going to pour it tomorrow.
he's having the thoughts regarding the Kabbalah at the time of Shechita. At the time of Shechita, that he's going to do the Kabbalah tomorrow, that doesn't invalidate. But if he has thoughts by the Kabbalah that he's going to pour the Shirayim the next day, then that would invalidate. Now, this is very surprising, because we just said that Shirayim doesn't invalidate the leftover blood.
Shrine for tomorrow, is that?
Amalei Omer Rabbanan l'Rava. So this one of the sages says to Rava, Shvicha Shirayim, Shvicha Shirayim Aktarim Le'Paslu Machshava. You see, if we would read it exactly the opposite, ask me that you're Gemara. Let me see what they say. Then this would be a little smoother, but I don't think that's the way it's working. The first brisa, which is what's the first brisa? Says I'm slaughtering the sacrifice with intent to receive the blood tomorrow. In that case, the sacrifice does not become pigul. Exactly the way we read it. This one, the second brisa, discusses where I'm receiving the blood with intent to pour the remnants of the blood in the base of the altar. Then the sacrifice does become pigul. It's exactly what we didn't want to say. But he's saying that no, that's going to be so okay. So Amalei Umer Rabbanan, the certain rabbi said to Rava, says 1 second, Shvicha Shirayim Aktar Simun Le'Paslu Machshava. He says, does pouring the remnants, would that not invalidate the sacrifice for Tanan? What we learned in the Mishnah.
You said it.
Quoting Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva was okay. It's not.
Which detail?
It's pigul. But it
Becomes pigul. We have two brises. One says by the Kabbalah it doesn't, it's not a problem, and one says by the Kabbalah it is a problem. We're explaining that if he has thoughts by the Shechita regarding the Kabbalah, then it's not a problem. But if he has thoughts by the Kabbalah regarding pouring the remnants, it is a problem. Yeah, that's the way we explain.
and they have different opinions.
No, we didn't say different opinions. So the sage, one of the students, says to Rava, Shvicha Shirayim. It's not going to invalidate if he has thoughts by the pouring of the. This is what we quoted in the Brisa Vatanah, that pouring of the remnants, it won't invalidate. Now you have to differentiate here between what the Gemara is going to do. It's going to differentiate between if he has thoughts while he's pouring, or if he has thoughts while he's doing another service about the pouring. So it says Vatanan. But we learned in the Mishnah, and it's supposed to be Vatanya, we learned in the Brisa, it says like this, maybe the thoughts should not affect only by the eating of the meat. How do you know that thoughts by pouring of the remnants and by burning the limbs that it also affects? If it will eat. There's two types of eating. Which means that the putting of the limbs on the altar is another type of eating, and thoughts about the eating would invalidate.
I think also he has in mind to do it tomorrow, but he did it now. He did it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter when he does.
The thought that's destroying it.
Doesn't matter when
So
he
it's
does
not
it.
pigul.
No, pigul is the thought.
It's not pigul,
Pigul
right?
is not the fact. Pigul is not a fact. Pigul is just the thoughts that he's going to do it,
Oh.
even if he actually does it all correctly.
But that's we learned that now after you heard this.
No,
Yesterday he said he had machshava pigul.
No, but pigul doesn't actually mean that it was old. Pigul just that it was done in the wrong time. Pigul has thoughts that he was going to do it in the wrong time. Yeah. So the Gemara now explains. It says, if that's the case, that there's the person eating and the mizbeach eating, So what are you telling me, that the offering of the limbs and the pouring of the remnant won't invalidate? It will invalidate, because it's talking about another type of eating, consuming, I should say, instead of eating. There's two types of consuming, right? The fire consumes and the person consumes. It's like kasha. It's not a question. This is when he says, I'm sprinkling the blood with intention to pour the remnant tomorrow. We said that was not considered pigul,
He's doing the right thing now.
because the thoughts by the pouring of the shirayim doesn't make it pigul, concerning the pouring of the shirayim. But if he has has thoughts by the pouring regarding the offering of the limbs, then that would make it pigul. Why? Because the offering of the limbs is a type of consumption, and that if there's thoughts about consumption, then it wouldn't make it pigul. You have a chart? There's any charts in the Gemara? Klalo de Mosa, Rashi says. Rashi in the top line. You see the bottom of the wide lines. Rashi says, the thoughts need to be at the time of a service regarding person eating or the mizbeach eating. If he has thoughts when pouring regarding the eating of the meat, like klumya, that's considered nothing. Because the pouring is nothing. Oh, so it actually comes out the opposite here. Oh, that would be pickled. This is the opposite. The Gemara works the opposite now. If I would pour, if he says while he's sprinkling the blood, he has thoughts about pouring the blood. That's invalid. Why? Because the pouring of the blood is also the consuming of the altar, even though it's the remnant of the blood. But nevertheless, it's still a consumption. It doesn't. The thoughts need to be by something that's ma'akiv. The thoughts need to be at a service that's ma'akiv the kapara, but what the thoughts are about have to be a consumption. So the thoughts by the shvicha shirayim regarding aktar shemurim is not. It's not a problem, even though it's a consumption. But the avodah isn't. It's not a real avodah. Shvicha shirayim. Okay, I'd like to put this all into a chart. Where we're holding now, let me just let's go back. If he has thoughts while he's doing Kabbalah, while he's receiving the blood, with that about
It depends what he's thinking.
let's say that he's going to spill the blood at the wrong time while he's doing the Kabbalah. I think that's not a problem, because it has to be. Because Kabbalah less machshava k'maisa.
And then you have to move it this way.
You made the chart?
No, ChatGPT.
ChatGPT made the chart. Intent for shechita or intent for which avodah is affected?
It goes to the soul.
If the thought is during another service while doing shechita, it is kosher. Intent for Kabbalah. No, you see, but you're missing one thing. Oh, okay, intent for Kabbalah or Kiddush Kaimetz, then it becomes pigul. Now, I'm not sure about that. That'll be said it doesn't become pigul. If one slaughters an offering in the temple courtyard with intent to pour the remainder of its blood on the altar the next day, or to burn its portion on the altar the next day, the offering is pigul. Okay. Performing one of the following sacrificial rites: flaying the animal, cutting the animal to pieces, taking its portion up to the altar for burning, with the wrong offering in mind, or with intent to consume it beyond its designated time, or with intent to consume it outside the temple does not disqualify the offering. No, that's not what I'm looking for.
Did you go all the way to the last two rows? Like, did you move it?
Yeah,
to
yeah.
those?
An offering is rendered pigul only by prohibited intent while performing the rite that enables consumption of the offering. Consumption of meat, okay, no. I'm looking for what happens by Kabbalah if he has intent to sprinkle the blood.
It doesn't.
This one says it's good. It's pigul, but it's still.
No, pigul can't be kosher.
Well, this one says intent for Kabbalah or Kiddush. Receiving the blood accepted within the vessel. It is pigul.
Look, if I'm confused, ChatGPT could also be confused. I don't. I give no more credit to ChatGPT than myself. Okay. Okay. Basically, what we learned was that Kabbalah should not affect the pigul. And it says that Kabbalah does affect the pigul. How did we answer that? We said that it depends if he's having thoughts by another act. That doesn't affect. But if he's Mekabel Dhamma, Shirayim, that would affect. So it comes out as that thoughts by the Kabbalah would yes affect. It's that's okay. This would clarify. Thoughts by any services when you're going to do the Kabbalah does not affect the validity of the sacrifice, because the Kabbalah is not a consumption. It needs to be a consumption. Either he's consuming it, or the altar is consuming. That's what it means that the Kabbalah doesn't affect, because thoughts when you're going to do the Kabbalah doesn't affect. But if you have thoughts by the Kabbalah when you're going to do something else that's a consumption, either sprinkling or pouring or burning, so then that would affect. I think that's where we're holding. Yeah. It's an intent associated with Kabbalah does render the offering pigul. Refers to a case where the Kohen performed Kabbalah with intent. Exactly. Carried out after this time, since Kabbalah is a blood of Vaida, this renders the offering pigul. He performed Kabbalah. Okay, good. He performed Kabbalah with intent in one of the acts of consumption. But if someone has intent by the Shechita that he's going to do Kabbalah in the wrong time, that's not that won't be right. That won't be invalid.
You mentioned it.
Okay. We're holding by Amrav Yehuda Breder of Chia, Shemati Shetvilas Etzba Mefagelas Bechatas Pnimis. This is a little easier than the complications of the last. Even though it's not a walk in the park, halacha park, but it's a little easier than here. It says that by certain sacrifices, the application of the blood needs to be done with dipping his finger into it. Now, this is typical by chatas pnimis, the chatas that goes inside the sanctuary. You have to dip your finger in. Right? So you dip the finger into. No, remember that? Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, who we mentioned yesterday, he says that he heard that dipping the finger in could also be pigul. Now, does he mean that you had thoughts? Yeah, but he had thoughts while he's dipping his finger in that he's going to offer the sacrifice the next day. So that's pigul. Yeah. So Shama Ilfa, I don't know if you remember Ilfa. He was a friend of Rabbi Yochanan. He was the one that said he's going to throw himself into the sea if he can't explain how every price is supported by a Mishnah. Remember that? So Shema Ilfa Amra Kamei the Rav Pada. Ilfa here is what Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rav Chia, he's taught, and he goes and he says it over to Rav Pada. Okay, what's the Aleph? Bar Pada. Amar, he said, Klum Lamada Pigol, but Pada tells him what? Klum Lamada Pigol al Mishlamim. Pigol is associated with, where do we learn pigol from? Imayachal, Biyachal, Besar, Zeva, Lama. Yeah. Ma Shlama mean Tfilas Etzem Mefagelis. 1 second. There's no such service by the Shlamim as dipping your finger into the blood. So we only learn it from Shlamim. So if you learn it from Shlamim, how could you come out with a new law by a Chatas that's not by the original? Gemara says, so I guess this must be Ilfa telling it back to Barpada. Hey, we learned everything from Shlamim. If that's the case, then Imash Shlamim Shlei Lishman, ein Maitzim Midei Pigel. Av Chatas Shlei Lishman, ein Maitzim Midei Pigel. There's a great response. Pigel, it's funny. Pigel needs to be, everything about the sacrifice needs to be kosher, except for that one invalidation. If it's invalid anyway, then it doesn't get to the status of being so invalid as pigel. It's messed up for other reasons. Pigel is very serious. Pigel like kares. So the sacrifice is invalid for other reasons. So by a shlamim, if you have thoughts of shalei lashma, the sacrifice is still kosher. So if you had thoughts of pigel plus shalei lashma, it's going to be pigel because the sacrifice is still kosher because of the shalei lashma. But if you have thoughts by a chatas, it's going to invalidate the sacrifice, a shalei lashma by a chatas, because chatas shalei lashma is invalid. And if you have thoughts of pigel together with it, it won't be pigel because it's already invalid for the other. But if you tell me that it needs to be just like a shlamim, so some shlei lishma is going to be kosher, so it's going to be pigel. By the chatas shlei lishma, it's going to be invalid. So you're going to tell me that it's going to be pigel because we learned it from a shlamim, and by a shlamim it wouldn't have that. Rather, what are you going to say? That everything has its own halachas. Miribuya de kroikasi. I learn it from an extra, from what it means is that I learn it from not that it needs to be exactly like a shlamim, but I learn it that the same halacha should apply. So over here also, if the halacha of this sacrifice is that you have to dip your finger in it, so then that's going to be the laws of pigel will apply to that. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Ba'aliyah zu shamati. In this attic I heard, I'm not sure what he's referring to.
They have an upper story.
I heard in this upper story, what's this referring to? In the era of the Mishnah and Talmud, people would live in two-story houses. The bottom floor, referred to as the house, was the main living area. The upper floor had more privacy. For this reason, sages would often seclude themselves there in order to concentrate or study, or even to convene large meetings, which were sometimes held in secret. Okay, so Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, the tfilas etzba mefagelas. Okay, tfilas etzba is exactly what Rabbi Yehuda Bereder Rav Chia said. This Toiba Rab Shimon ben Lakish. Shimon ben Lakish is surprised. He says, Klum lamdu pigel al mishlamim. 1 second, we learned it from Shlamim. Mashlam ein tfilas etzba mefagelas. By Shlamim, you don't have that concept. So Avchatas ein tfilas etzba mefagelas bem. So it's the same thing that we mentioned before. Then so they said V'chiakom mishlamim lamdu. But how can it be everything from Shlamim? If that's the case, that it's from Shlamim, then by a Shlamim it doesn't become invalid if you have thoughts of Shlei Lishma, which means by the Chatas also it should become invalid, which means that by the Chatas it should remain pigel, even though it's the whole sacrifice is invalid. It's in. That's what it's supposed to be. In. Yes. We do learn everything from Shlamim. Paisel b'shlamim, v'shalei l'shmei paisel b'chatas. Says, look at this. I have a thought by shlamim that would invalidate it. You were saying the only thought by shlamim that could invalidate it would be shalei l'shmei. You say, well, shalei l'shmei doesn't invalidate the shlamim, but it would invalidate the chatas. And if it doesn't invalidate shlamim, it shouldn't invalidate the chatas. So We said, well, 1 second, but I do have another thought by Shlamim that would invalidate, not Shalei Lishmai, not if it's for the wrong sacrifice, but Chutz Lim Kaimai, out of the allotted area. So that would invalidate. So since I have by Shlamim a possibility of invalidating it, together with the pigel, by having thoughts of out of the allotted area, since thoughts of out of the allotted area would invalidate the shlam, would also, and shalei l'shmai would invalidate the chatas. I'm comparing shalei l'shmai to chutz l'kaimai. Ma chutz l'kaimai peisel b'shlam mitzvah just as chutz l'kaimai out of the allotted area would invalidate a peace offering, and therefore it would make it not pigol because a pigol needs to be a kosher offering, entirely kosher except for that one thought. So therefore, Shalei Lashmai, a different sacrifice would invalidate the sin offering, but also make it not pickle. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah responds to this. He says, "Mitzida Tavra, you have a broken logic. You're saying Chutzlam Kaimai would invalidate by the Shlamim, but Chutzlam Kaimai is not just specific to the Shlamim. Chutzlam Kaimai is across the board. It would invalidate out of the allotted area. It would invalidate every sacrifice. But when it comes to having thoughts of a different sacrifice, that would only invalidate 2 karbanos. So maybe it won't apply. What are you going to say? I'm going to say that anything that would invalidate it would make it not piggle, and anything that is essential to it makes it piggle. So we're just going to keep it very general. We're not going to, like, what would the 4 services. It's not specifically chutzlam kaima. It's anything that would invalidate, would make it not piggle. So also by the chatas, anything that would invalidate, which would include shalei l'shmai, and also the finger, dipping the finger in the blood would be included in that. Amar Rav Mari Afanana Mitanina. Rav Mari says we also learned this in the Mishnah. Zaklal, here's the rule. Kol hakaimetz, anyone that does the scoop of the mincha, v'naisim bekeli, he puts it into a vessel, v'hamelech v'hamakter, and he walks in and he brings it up to the altar, and he has the wrong thoughts, so that would be invalid. The Gemara says, Bish, Laima, Kaimetz. I understand why Kaimetz, the scoop, would invalidate Haino Sheichet, because that's like slaughtering. Mailech, walking it up. Haino Mailech, that's walking it up. But we're comparing meal offering flour to blood. Maktir, offering it on the altar. Nami Haino Zerek, that's sprinkling of the blood. Elenaisin Bekeli Mainiyu, what is putting it in the vessel? Why are you saying that that's a significant service? Maybe you'll say, well, that's like receiving the blood. So the Gemara says, "Mel mi dami." Is it similar to receiving the blood? Hasa memela hacha yukashakal barami. Over there, the blood spurts into it. Over here, you have to actually take it and put it into it. Ela kivan d'leisagi d'layav al karchei aved cheshuve yachanam kivan d'leisagi d'layaved al karchei haino haylach al karchei haino haylacha. Okay. Let me see your Gemara. Just have to see if you have to put that in. Okay. So, since it's not sufficient, if he doesn't perform it, so it's considered as bringing the blood, and so therefore it could become piggle by putting it into the vessel. The Gemara says, "Loi." No, lo'ilam dami lekabala. It actually is kabbalah. But you said that over there the blood spurts into it. Over here you have to place it into it. It says that doesn't make a difference. Given the idi matan keliu, so what? Doesn't matter. However, what would come out now is that if someone dips his finger into the offering, we don't have anything that's comparable to it. The Gemara said, right? So we don't have it. It has to match up. Let's say, let's leave the Lema Ketanai for tomorrow.
Have an announcement while we're still on. Free scrap pickup at the NMB Victory
What time?
Hall area. Starts at 8 a.m. today and then again at 11 a.m. today and again on Monday.
Okay,
Shkoyach.
8 a.m. Okay, what street do you go down to get there?